In this final video for this lesson, we are going to be doing a writing activity. I remember when I was in high school, I hated the writing activities because I'm very much a math person. But this is one of the most helpful things that my teachers ever had me to do. When it came to learning new material, it was the writing exercises that really cemented this information in my mind. I'm going to be working from this memory piece that we made. We've already done this. Remember, these are the open, you open the little foldable and you have the information inside. Hopefully you've been practicing with this process. So I'm going to go to the writing section of my notebook, and I've already set up the prompt. I want you to pause the video and write this on a piece of paper. Just stop the video for as long as you need. It says, explain the scientific method in paragraph form. Use your memory piece as a guide. The structure is to be sequence, and then the purpose we're going to talk about. So just pause your video, write this down, and when you're ready, just hit the play button. Okay, if I'm using the structure as sequence, there are a few transition words that I'll want to remember. Words like first, next, finally, after, then, and there are others, but those are ones that come to mind. If I'm doing a sequence, a step-by-step process, then I need to use those transition words. The purpose of this writing passage is to explain, and it tells me that right here. It says to explain the scientific method. So the purpose, the reason I'm writing this is an explanatory passage. So we're going to explain the scientific method. I want you to imagine that you are explaining this to someone who's never heard of it. You don't want to do it in very complicated terms. You want to do it in a way that they can understand. We are not drawing a diagram. We're using paragraph form. We can use more than one paragraph. We just need to not use arrows and things. We're doing it in written form. So I'm going to start off this passage with a main idea, with a thesis, a theme for the reason I'm writing it. So I'm going to say, and I want you to do this with me, the scientific method, this is my topic, is a process. I'm just going to use my flashcard definition. Or organized set of investigative, this is straight from the text, so I really should be putting quotes around it, procedures. I forget how many words you can quote without quotation marks, and then once you are quoting so many, you have to use the quotation marks. And we can do that. Let's just go ahead and put them in there, because that is from the passage. We're quoting the authors of the passage. Okay, the scientific method is a process or organized set of investigative procedures. And you may have noticed, I hope you did, that I indented this first line of my paragraph. That's very important. This is called an indentation. You want to indent about an inch to show that you're starting a new paragraph. Okay, so now we go back to our memory piece. What is that first step called? And I'm going to change colors here. There's a reason for this. You don't have to, but I encourage you to if color helps you. The first step of the process is asking a question. Now, I'm not ready to stop this sentence because this is very vague. Remember, we're writing for someone who's never heard of the scientific method. A question about what? A question about something you observe. Remember, observe can be see, taste, smell, feel, and hear. I'm just going to say observed. Period. So I have that first step in that sentence. I'm going to change colors because I'm moving to the second step, and I'm going to use the word then. Then you will need to research your question. Now, why would we do that? Why would you want to research your question? Go back to our example of Sam, and we said maybe Sam would Google his symptoms or take his blood pressure at home. What is the purpose of that? You will research your question to discover what is already known. I want to find out what other people already know about this topic. Okay, so we've got the first and second steps in there. I don't want to use the word then again. I think I will use the word next. Next, comma. Next, we did what? After you research, form a hypothesis Now, we could stop it right there, but that doesn't tell the person who knows nothing about this anything. What is a hypothesis? What does a hypothesis do? You form a hypothesis to clearly state, remember it was a sentence, what you believe to be true. Remember, Sam's doctor said, "I think you have a heart problem." Was he certain? No, not without testing. And that's the next step. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to use a transition word with this one. You will conduct experiments or an experiment to test your hypothesis. And I think, well, what about experiments? Well, I know that they have to be very what? What's the words? What are the words that we used? So let's go back to our graphic organizer just a minute, where we talked about experiments. Go ahead and open that one up. It has to be a planned thing, and it has to be based on science. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to add the word planned right in here. I don't need to erase. I don't need to start over. I just put that little caret sign and I add the word. You will conduct a planned experiment to test the hypothesis. Okay, I think I'll go back to a transition word. I'm going to use the word then. Then, organize the data. To see what it says. That's analysis. Okay, that's the fifth step. The next one, I'm not going to use a transition word. I'm just going to go right on into my sentence, if I can find a color that'll work. This data, or let's say this analysis, will allow you to draw a conclusion And why do we do that? What's the purpose of doing that? To support or reject your hypothesis. And notice I'm putting a period at the end of each sentence. You have to stop those thoughts before you start a new one. I'm going to use the word next. Next, share your results and that's such a short sentence. I'm going to put a comma and then put my last sentence in here. Share your results, and finally, comma, conduct further research, or I'm just going to say conduct more research if needed. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Let me reread it, and then we'll do some annotating. The scientific method is a process or organized set of investigative procedures. The first step of the process is asking a question about something observed. Then you will research your question to discover what is already known. Next, form a hypothesis to clearly state what you believe to be true. You will conduct an experiment to test the hypothesis. Then, organize the data to see what it says. This analysis will allow you to draw a conclusion to support or reject your hypothesis. Next, share your results. And finally, conduct more research if needed. Okay, this is not bad. It's not perfect by any means. I will never write the perfect piece of writing because I'm not a writer. I'm very much a numbers person. But this is going to work. I need to make some corrections though. The scientific method is a process, or I want to add right here after or, I want to add the word a scientific process or a organized set of investigative procedures. Okay, it's not a that I need because this word starts with a vowel. I need to use the word an organized set of investigative procedures. The first step is of the process is asking a question about something observed. I'm going to add right here using my caret, you have observed. Then I want to put a comma after that transition word. Then you will research your question to discover what is already known. I'm going to add a little bit here about the topic. Next, form a hypothesis. Okay, I'm going to take out the word form. I'm just going to mark it through and say write. Write a hypothesis to clearly state what you believe to be true. You will conduct an experiment, a planned experiment. Okay, so I have a problem right here because an experiment would work. This is a vowel, so you would use an. But when I put the word planned in there, I need to take the N off. A planned experiment to test the hypothesis. Then organize the data to see what it says. This analysis will allow you to draw a conclusion to support or reject your hypothesis. Next, share your results, and finally, conduct more research if needed. Okay, I need to be sure that I have all the steps in my process. The first step is asking a question. Then you will research your question. Next, you will write a hypothesis. That's step 3. And I would not actually do this if I were going to turn this passage in to be graded, I would not put these boxes around it. But I'm just checking here. Next, you will write a hypothesis to state what you believe. You will conduct an experiment. There's step 4. You will organize the data. Step 5. You will draw a conclusion. Step 6. You will share your results and conduct more research if necessary. So we have all 8 steps of our process. That would be an important thing to check. Question, research, hypothesis, experiment, organize, conclusion, share, and more research. There are 8 of them, so make sure you have them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We do. We were told to explain the scientific method in paragraph form. We have done that. We were told to use a sequence structure. So let's check for a sequence structure. The first step, there's a sequence word. The word then is a sequence word. Next is a sequence word. There's then again. There's next again. And there's finally. So that's clearly a sequence passage. Is it perfect? No. I will never write the perfect piece of writing. But it is very much acceptable. On a scale of 1 to 6, I would give this about a 4. If you wanted to get a 6, you could add more details. You could add more paragraphs. One of the things that I would do to increase my score is to avoid the use of the word you. Okay. But this is passing. This is an acceptable piece of writing. It doesn't need to be perfect. And I wanted it to be around a 4 because I want you to see how you can improve it. Write it again and add your own thoughts to it. Make it better. See if you can make it go from a 4 to a 6. And you can always check with your instructor to get a grade. If you want to know what it would score, just ask your instructor and he or she can give you an idea. But you cannot do this kind of activity unless you really understand the topic. So this is another good thing to review before a test. It will allow you to review the correct steps in story form. For me personally, this is much harder to remember than this, because we all learn differently. For me, this is the way to memorize it. But for some people, this is the way to make it make sense. And I'm trying to give you all of the different ways so that it makes sense to you. Okay, I believe that brings this chapter to a close. There is a final exam that you will need to take to get credit for doing this session. But you can use your notebooks to do that unless your teacher tells you otherwise. For me, the whole purpose of making these notebooks is so that you have something to refer to. And this is a very complicated set of facts that you have to remember. So I encourage you to use your notebooks.